Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of both the American Legion and the VFW, thank you for being here today. And certainly, in talking about military sexual trauma, I really appreciate the position of the American Legion. I think that those victims of military sexual trauma ought to be able to choose the best treatment options available in their specific case, rather than having it dictated to them. And I would expand that to all mental health care, because the biggest cost driver I think that we're confronting in disability care, in disability, is post-traumatic stress disorder or mental health. And so I think it's a very personal thing, that interaction between a therapist and a patient. And I really think that individuals ought to be able to select what is best for them. And I'm disappointed with the VA in terms of having a drug-centric approach in terms of a modality of treatment. And I think we've had testimony to the effect in this committee where, in fact, we've related suicides to, say, I think we had one instance here where a veteran had moved and was given a cocktail of psychoactive drugs to counter symptoms of PSD, and then moved and couldn't navigate the system for a refill. And that's a fairly dramatic thing to happen when somebody's suddenly off of these drugs. And at the end, they're given a drug to wake up in the morning, and a drug to go to sleep at night, and a drug for this and a drug for that. In my view, that's not a good therapy. But I understand that it's probably from the VA's point of view, it's more cost-effective to do that than the laborious sort of treatment where psychotherapy is given as an exchange between two individuals, the therapist and the patient. And so I think the more options, and who better, if a patient is feeling better as a result of a certain modality of treatment that they're going through, whatever that modality of treatment is, I just think it ought to be available. And again, I think it's a very personal, interpersonal thing. And so I would ask for the VFW to go back and take a second look at this issue, because I just think it's so important for individuals to have options and to make it their decision when it comes to something so interpersonal as therapy for MST, for military sexual trauma, or for post-traumatic stress disorder. Sure.
If I may, Congressman, we completely agree that the veterans need to be presented with options, but I think high quality and accessible options. And ultimately what it comes down to is providing them the ability to go to providers that, one, knows how to care for veterans, right? But also knows the other aspects of and comorbidities that are associated with mental health conditions, right? But ultimately, what it comes down to is reforming the VA culture and the delivery care model. One of the things that's most frustrating about VA is that we often find, as a patient, also find that a lot of VA employees are quick to justify why they can say no instead of getting to yes, right? That's something that needs to change. But also the delivery care model to be able to provide them those options instead of just sending them off to the private sector to fend for themselves.
Let me tell you, I don't think our veterans that have returned from war can wait for the VA to reform itself. There was one Iraq War veteran in my congressional district who committed suicide. The only thing, what we were able to trace was the fact that he called VA for an appointment and hadn't received a response for 2 weeks before his death. And so I can tell you, as an Army Marine Corps veteran, our veterans deserve better, and they can't wait for this system to improve. They have to have choices, and they deserve to have those choices now. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.